Welcome to Dr. DD Durban Online. We're a church family on mission to see Durban change into a place where Jesus reigns. Here's this week's message.
Great. Good morning. It's wonderful having you here. If it's your first time, my name is Lorraine, and I have the wonderful privilege of planting and leading this church with my beautiful wife, Erna, that's sitting here in the front. Great, guys. I want to start off this morning by asking you quickly, any of you guys like me, that at a certain stage you grew up and you became older, and as you became older, you became wiser, and then that one moment, that one fateful day, you realized that your mom was right. Anybody had that experience before? That you were sitting and you're thinking, my parents, they told me, I never wanted to listen, but they were. Anybody like that before? Okay, so if your hand is not up now, it just basically means you're not yet old enough. So we'll think of you guys, and afterwards we'll pray for you. May it go well with you. But on a more serious note, quickly just want to ask you, if you, sitting here today, wish that someone could have told you a truth that they hadn't told you earlier, what would that truth be? What is the one thing, the one truth you wished somebody told you earlier in life? Great. So with that being said, it's kind of like an introduction for today's story. And we have a very brave lady that's going to be sharing her story. Taryn, sitting there at the back, so you can pray for her so long. But her story is a story about truth, the search for it, what it truly is all about, and then having the faith to surrender to that truth. So week 1, it's about the faith to go. Week 2 is the faith to stay. And this week is about the faith to surrender to the truth. So this morning, I want us to dive a little bit deeper into that question, what is truth? And the way I want us to do it is by looking at 2 statements of Jesus, 2 things that he said. And in these 2 statements that Jesus spoke, because Jesus had quite a lot of stuff to say, and specifically some quite profound stuff to say about truth. And in these 2 statements, we're going to discover 3 things that Jesus reveals to us. We're going to discover what's the nature of truth. Secondly, we're going to discover what is the importance of truth. Why is it actually important to know the truth? And lastly, we're going to look at the source of truth. So Jesus tells us these 3 things in these 2 little statements. So I'm going to dive in. The first one is the nature of truth. What is the nature of truth? Maybe you've heard this before. I grew up in school, and at a certain stage when you're going to your teenage years and you become very next level and you start speaking about big, you go deep. Anybody ever been there before? You're like, I'm going deep, and we talk deep stuff now, and I'm grown up now. And then at a certain stage in your deep journey, you discover this one little saying when you and your buddy were fighting too much about your deep revelation not being the same as their deep revelation. And then your buddy and you just come to the conclusion to say, well, what's true for me is not true for you. That's clear. So you have your truth, and I have my truth. Anybody ever heard that before? Can you relate to that statement? Okay. It's a common statement nowadays. Like it's like agree to disagree, your truth, my truth. But the thing is with the statement is, can it actually be true? Can there be 2 different truths? Or is truth not like this is a table and it's a table? You with me? Isn't that a contradiction? In fact, the guy that actually brought this idea into our world is a German philosopher called Friedrich Nietzsche. I don't know if you've heard about this, Hope. No? So he's a very big brain trust guy. And he said the following. He said, there are no eternal facts as there are no absolute truths. That's the statement that he made. And from that, we get the era or the age of relativism that was entered into our lives. And most of us, we just live in that culture. We swim around in that culture of relativism. And it's kind of like, no, what is your truth is your truth, and my truth is my truth. Because there's no such thing, clearly, as Friedrich Nietzsche has said, there's no such thing as an absolute truth. But the question is that true? And that's the journey that we're going to be on this morning. Now, I quickly want to ask you, obviously you can imagine this has found its way in so many places in the world, and we see the effect of this statement of Friedrich Nietzsche in so many spaces. We see it in the way people see themselves. We see it in the way people see the world around them. We also see it in the way people see God, which has become quite the conversation. So if there is no such thing as an absolute truth, well, then maybe nobody has a grip on who God really is. And maybe you've heard about this little illustration, which is very familiar, especially among the New Age group, and which is a big move born out of this relativism movement. And basically, the illustration goes like this when it comes to the picture of God. People will say, you know what? All religions on earth, no one has the full view of God. They're like a few blind men or blindfolded men. They cannot know the full picture. Nobody has the full picture. They're all trying to feel out God and trying to give us a perspective of who God truly is. They're like a few blind guys trying to figure out what's an elephant. They're all blindfolded. And then you have the religious leaders, and they're trying to figure out who God is, and they kind of touch here and there. And here you have one guy at the trunk, and he's like, no, elephants, they're like long and slurpy. Another guy is like at the ear of the elephant, and he's like, oh, no, guys, that's for God. God is like, he's like thin and flappy, like thin, like an ear kind of vibes. Other guy is at the elephant's leg, and he's like, no, he's short and stumpy. Another guy is at the tusk. No, he's hard and sharp. He's pointy. That's elephants. And so the metaphor goes that no one truly have the full grip of nobody can know the truth because we're all blind. There are many roads up the mountain, as they'd say, to God. That's kind of the picture. That's where this thing comes from. That's the idea. So nobody can have it. So let's just have peace and settle and be okay that no one has the full revelation of who God is or what the elephant looks like. Now, it sounds all fine, and I probably think you're sitting here and thinking to yourself, well, that's really a good argument. I mean, I can imagine it makes a lot of sense. The only flaw in this argument, however, is this wait a minute moment. How do you know there are a few blind guys feeling out an elephant, trying to discover it? The only way you can know that is that the guy saying that it's so is the one guy in the story that doesn't have a blindfold on. So there's one guy that's standing from afar, and he says, no one knows what the elephant knows and looks like, except I know. So in my view, my statement of truth is that no one can know, but only I can know. Do you see the contradiction? No one knows who God is. That's my view. And that's my ultimate view. Do you guys see the picture here? So it's falling flat on itself. That's the statement here. The problem with this view and where the relativism gets you, it's like it doesn't make sense. Absolutely, the argument falls flat on itself. The problem here is that at least the other guys, the other religious oaks, are making the claim that we have the right view. They're not saying, no, I don't, and you get what I'm trying to say? They're honest about the statements that they make about God. Whereas very much in relativism, all roads lead to the same God. That view is, guys, without even knowing it, a statement of truth. You get what I'm saying? And they're not realizing they're putting it next to one another. Okay, so the nature of truth is something very interesting. We're going to look at that just now. So before I'm diving into what Jesus said, just quickly back to our good friend, Mr. Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche. What do we say to his statement where he says there's no such thing as an absolute truth? Well, I think the best thing we can say to him is just ask him the following question. Mr. Nietzsche, is that an absolute statement? Are you guys with me? There's no such thing as an absolute truth. Well, is that an absolute statement? Do you guys get what I'm saying? So you cannot say there's no such thing as an absolute truth because that is a truth in itself. And you violate your own statement by saying there's no such thing as that because you are making a truth claim at that moment. Do you guys see that relevant? In other words, there isn't a possibility in this world for you have your truth and I have my truth. In fact, Jesus puts it like this. John chapter 14. He says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now, just quickly, two things that I want to point out in Jesus' statement about truth. The first part of this is that I want you to know Jesus is not saying that I have the way and I have the truth and I have some life. He's not saying that. What's the claim that he's making? He's saying, I am the truth. That is radical. I want you guys to hear what he's saying. And it's something that many people, especially in our day and age after relativism moved into our world, into the culture, that's something a lot of people are not happy with. Because if Jesus says he is the truth, that means everything else that's not like him and that's not him is obviously then not the truth. Just put it nicely. You guys get what I'm saying? So I want you to note that firstly. Secondly, if that's the case, I think Jesus is touching on something very important here. Because Jesus himself proclaimed to be God, proclaimed to be there before Abraham was. Before Abraham, I was. He was there before and he will be there after. So he is claiming something about truth and the nature of truth, and it's the following. It's that truth is not relative, but it is eternal. In other words, truth is not a new thing. It's an age-old thing. Usually if it's a new thing, it's most likely not truth. You kind of get what I'm trying to say. Truth has always been there. It's rock solid. It's something you can build your life on. So if anyone ever talks to you again about this, I would suggest maybe just asking the question, when you say your truth, do you not maybe mean your view of reality and my view of reality? Because we do have that. That's true. I have a perspective on what's real, and you might have a perspective on what's real. And then there's a third side, the true reality. So it's my side of the story, your side of the story, and then the true side of the story. With me? And the journey then is to discover what is the true side, because we're all limited. So in essence, there is a part of blindness, and that's why Jesus comes in and he says, I am the light. I'm shedding some light on some stuff that might not look clear to you. And we've all been there. I've been there for so long in my life. And in so many places, I find myself still in a space where Jesus comes and I thought, no, that's the way things work. And then Jesus is like, well, let me just put on the light in your life, Lorraine. And then suddenly, I wake up and it's not like it to have light in your eyes. But I'm so happy because when I wake up and I walk, now I don't walk in front of stuff and hit myself. Go ahead. Which brings me to point number 2. Now that we know something about the nature of truth, truth is eternal. Secondly, why is truth important? You know, when it comes to this idea of believing things, I had the privilege of journeying with a few guys sitting in this room as well. And you might have heard me before saying this, but I am very happy with you believing exactly what you want to believe. I am not going to force you to believe what I believe. You have that right. It's God's gift to you to choose what do you believe to be true. I think for so long and so many times, just a quick little note on the church. So if you're part of this family and you call yourself a follower of Jesus, I've many times seen the church just like pushing judgmentally down on people, forcing them to, you must believe. And if you don't believe exactly what I believe, then we get, have you guys seen those wars? Culture wars? I think we're making a big mistake, guys. Can I invite you to be okay with it? People, Jesus gave them the grace to discover and journey and believe where they are. So that's true. You can believe exactly what you want to believe. There's just one little note on the bottom of that statement that I want to put in. If you believe a lie, you might run into devastating consequences. So you believe whatever you want to believe, but if it's a lie, it can cause great damage in your life. Let me give you an example, a lovely, ridiculous one. If you believe cars are clouds, check that out. Next level car, clouds on wheels, baby. cars are clouds on wheels. I absolutely believe it with all of my heart. You will never convince me otherwise. They're fluffy, white little things on wheels driving around haven't you seen them? They're beautiful. And then maybe it's because like you need to go and see an eye doctor and so on, and all the white cars, like look a little bit fluffy. But anyways, you with me? But you believe that in your deepest of hearts, you believe they're clouds. Okay? That's wonderful. You could believe that. The problem might come in the day you get the rude awakening and make the massive discovery that they're hunks and chunks and blocks of metal going at 100 Ks on a road, and if you get in front of one of these babies, there will be some serious consequences. Even if you believe they are clouds. You can believe they're clouds till you're blue. But the moment you walk in front of one of them, you are going to experience some big damage. Now, guys, can I tell you how many people I've been sitting with in my own life and in my own journey? Wherever I experience brokenness in my life, maybe you can relate to what I'm saying. It's where I believed a lie. And I just trusted that thing. And everybody said, jump. And when I jumped, nobody caught me. Everybody said, go sit in that chair. It's going to hold you. When I sat down in the chair, fell flat. So you can believe what you want, but it is super important to put your trust in something that's concrete and true. That's quite a big thing. Because the damage of believing a lie is massive. Now, with that being said, if you think about sharing truth with someone, it should always be because you care for that someone. Sharing truth is never a judgmental moment. It's a caring moment. So please make sure the way that you posture yourself and the way that you speak to people when you share truth, that they feel the love and they don't feel the judgment because you know better and you are smarter. You with me? Guys, do you really care? Listen more than you speak and pray for opportunities to share truth in a loving way, that it may save that person from walking across the road and thinking a cloud might be coming past, and the next moment it's a car. So what does Jesus tell us about this, the importance of truth? Well, we read about it in John chapter 8, and Jesus is speaking to the Jews that decided to believe in him, and he says to them, "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciple, and then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." So Jesus is telling us something quite remarkable here. Before I dive into the implication of truth, just talk about this word abide for a moment. So Jesus says, if you abide in my word. Jesus is saying the word abide refers to making my words your home that you live in. Now, I know this might be strange to some of us, but Lorraine, this is a little bit weird. It's a foreign concept. It's a little bit abstract. But if you think about it a little bit, how do you build your little world for yourself? The world that you perceive, your reality comes into being by words that were spoken and that you put your trust in. And so you build something we call your worldview, your paradigm. The world that you find yourself living in, the world that you call home, has been formed and shaped over many years by statements of people and words that you've heard and you've put your trust in. And it becomes the place that you live in. With me? And Jesus is saying, in this statement, he's saying, I want you to make my words. Let my words become the thing that shape your home. Make it the thing that you live in. Allow me to define for you what reality truly is. What is good? What is not good? What is real? What is a lie? That's the invitation. He's saying, make your home here. A home is a place where you need to feel safe. A place where you You need to feel that you belong. And Jesus is saying, if you listen to my teachings, if you listen to every single thing I'm saying, and you embrace that as your home, he says, what will you find in my words? You will find the truth. And if you know that truth, it will set you free from the greatest disasters that you could ever imagine. Now, there might be other words speaking, like my desires are speaking very clearly to me. My culture might be speaking clearly. But Jesus is saying, guys, here's my word. I love you. I'm not against you. I'm for you. I have a plan for your future, plan to prosper you. I want to bless you. The first thing that he says to humanity, Adam and Eve, is he looks at them and he says, I bless you. So many times we think when God speaks, I wonder, what's the first thing you think he will say to you? I don't know about you. For many, it's you're a disappointment. You failed me. You are sinful. It's interesting to see that that's not the thing that Jesus says. The first thing he looks at is, I love you. And I'm reminded of that lady that got caught in adultery. And the Pharisees are using truth to judge her. And they come to Jesus and they want to trap him. And they're like, Jesus, she has broken the law. She did not listen to God's words. She is guilty. But just by the way, how do they know she's broken the law? Because they set her up to break it. Long story short, we'll talk about that one after the service. You can come and ask me some more questions. Okay? But the point is, they're standing and they're accusing her. Is what they're saying true? Yes. But is it love? No. And Jesus stands there, and what's the first thing he does? He says, let the first man with no sin. Same sin. He's talking about the same sin. Not just any sin. That sin. And then cast a stone. Oldest guys drops the stones first. You know, it's that thing about my mom said and she was right. Those guys already discovered it. So stones drop. Younger guys drop. And then the next moment he looks at her and he says, is there anyone accusing you? The only guy left that has no sin is standing in front of her and he can pick up the stone. But he's not, because he's not picking up stones. He is the stone. He is the rock of her salvation. And the rock himself stands before her and he tells her, well, neither do I. Now, go and sin no more. And what's that, go and sin no more? It's a true statement connected to the truth about what God says to you in your failures. I will give you grace so that you can discover what it means to live a blessed life. To live the life that I created you to live. To not live a life filled and polluted by lies, which will break your world apart, which basically is what sin is. Sin just breaks God's good world apart. So, with that being said, last little question. Now that we know the importance of truth and that Jesus claims that his words is the place that will build you that house of security and truth where you will not find some rude awakening surprises in your life, the last little question is, what does Jesus have to say about the source of truth? And I've actually already answered it in both of those scriptures. Jesus says, I am the truth. And whatever I speak is truth. I cannot lie because I am truth. So if I say it, it is. I want to give you a practical example about that. So here is my iPad. Lovely. I love using this thing. It's amazing. If Jesus was standing on the stage with me and he looked at that iPad and he said, no, this is a tree. You know what's going to happen to that iPad? It's immediately going to turn into a tree because God spoke the world into existence. That's the authority he has. His word creates. Jesus cannot lie. When he says, it is. That's how powerful he is. And the statement is that he makes when he says, I am the way, the truth, and life. So he is the source. Now, this morning I want to end off before touching too much on the source, by asking you a question and giving you an opportunity to think about that for a moment while we're listening to Taryn's story. And the question is this: as we're talking about truth, is there places in your life where Jesus is maybe shining a light and saying, I want you to trust me here? Places of brokenness, places of pain, and He's inviting you to walk into the house that He's building. A place where you can find belonging, love, security. Maybe you've wondered about this truth thing. And maybe today, you're not going to say, well, just a place in my life. Maybe today you're even a bit further away from that. Maybe it's not just a space in your life. Maybe you're still questioning this. And I maybe want to invite you to go on a journey and discover. Maybe just read for yourself. What did Truth Himself have to say about this world and you and reality? So with that being said, you guys can play the video there at the back.
Hi, I'm Taryn, and this is my story of hope. So I'm a Durban girl, and I actually grew up in this home. My dad built this home, funnily enough, and it's quite an amazing process to come full circle, because it was in this home that we spent a lot of time in various churches growing up. I went to lots of Sunday school classes, and even now while doing Bible study, I've got that song, Father Abraham had many sons. It constantly flows through my mind. And I must admit, we had a beautiful childhood in the sense that my mom was very much church orientated. But unfortunately, during the course of our teenage years, my dad got sort of swayed away because he was very much part of the committee processes, and he was very passionate about raising money and helping to build schools, but he didn't like what was going on with the money. And he kind of turned his back on the church and said, look, I don't really want to be a part of this, because if you're not using the money for good, then where is that money really going? And as a family, we actually stopped. And I think, my mom was always on this constant search. Sure. So she always said to us that we've got to, in order for us to truly understand humanity, we need to understand as many cultures as possible. So she kept saying to us, there's many paths up a mountain. So at school, I went on a journey. I started asking questions about yoga, about meditation, about Buddhism, and I was often kicked out. I kept getting told, why you're a heathen and you're bringing witchcraft into the school, and all I wanted was answers. There was just so many things that I didn't understand. So, I tried. I think after school, I tried a few different churches, a few different sermons, a few different communities, which I didn't really enjoy. I didn't feel welcome. And of course, that led me down a very dark path. Sure. I thought I was doing the right thing. My family, especially my big sister, tried to sway me out of it, but I wouldn't have it. My cousin used to phone me all the time, and she used to say, my darling, I'm just praying for you. I'm praying that Jesus will save you. And I kept saying to her, but what are you worried about? There's many paths up a mountain. So as long as what you're doing is for good, then it's okay. And she kept saying to me, no, but Jesus is the only way. And I didn't believe her. Sure. Looking back on the process, there were 4 distinctive paths. So thinking about what my mom mentioned, there's many paths up a mountain. First path being drugs and alcohol, getting involved in the wrong crowd, looking for acceptance. Second path being a journey down Buddhist philosophy. Third path being through Hindu process, understanding that Hindu concept. And then finally, men, immersing myself in a toxic relationship. So, in one of our yoga sessions, we were talking about this supposed energy called the Kundalini energy. Now, what piqued my interest was the Guru had related that Kundalini energy to the snake in the Bible. And he said that in the Garden of Eden, you had the tree of knowledge. And the snake, if you look at Hindu scripture, that Kundalini is represented as a snake. So he said, the story of the Bible of Adam and Eve is not a real story. It's just a representation of the journey of when that Kundalini rises up the spine and you reach a state of enlightenment, that is when you have all-seeing knowledge. And that all-seeing knowledge is accessible to anybody, provided people are willing to do the work. And this is another big thing that came about, because being part of that culture, everything was work-based. You are not accepted unless you do this. You are not accepted unless you write enough likha japa, unless you do enough sadhana, unless everything was doing. And it was very much ego-based. You know, if you are spending enough time at the ashram, you're considered a devoted devotee, you know. And I found that to be quite cruel. So anyway, during one of the yoga sessions, this Kundalini idea came about. I'd never heard of it before. So after the session, I phoned the Guru and I was like, what? I'm interested in this Kundalini thing. How does it work? And he said, are you wanting to try it? And I was like, well, yeah. But I need to know what it's about, you know, because I do want to have this journey with God. And he said, okay. He needs to organize a venue because it can't be done at the ashram. So he'll let me know. So, yeah. And then the first experience, it made me feel dirty. And then thereafter, every other experience, it was just, he just kept saying to me, you're not enough. You're not doing enough sadhana. You're not praying enough. You're not spending enough time with the Guru. You're not devoting enough of your time. You're not giving enough money. You're not doing enough. They call it karma yoga, where you go into the ashram and you clean the floor and you clean up the place. And everything became, for the next 6 years, it became, you are not enough. This is the narrative I constantly heard. And I believed eventually that God won't come to me because I'm not enough. So, my cousin gave me a call in January, and she asked me to come and spend some time with her in Bloem. And I thought, okay, great. There was a Bloem show happening and I could showcase my work. So I thought this is a great opportunity to expand my business. I didn't consider it to become the catalyst that changed my life. Being with my cousin in Bloem really, really changed my life. My cousin is very wise and she quoted quite a lot of scripture. And then she gave me the interpretation. And in her wisdom, she always brought Jesus into the equation. And I was quite fascinated with how she did that and how she said, you know, can't you see how Jesus is working in your life? And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool, actually. And then when I left Bloem, I was driving on the N1 And it was just a moment of calm. And it was such a beautiful feeling because the N1 highway is a very busy road. And I realized I was the only car on the road. It was just me. And this thought just came to me, I want to be baptized. But okay. This is a good thing because I want to walk a journey with God. And I was thinking about what my mom said, there's many paths up a mountain. My cousin said, no, there's not. Jesus is that path. There aren't many paths, so as many paths bring you pain. So if you follow Jesus, you will see things will start coming back together again. So I thought, okay, well, let's do this. Let's get baptized. Let's give my life to Jesus and see where that goes. And the moment I made that decision, my world just calmed down, my mind calmed down. And it was so beautiful because Roxanne phoned me. And I was like, hey, Kazi, I was just thinking about you. Like, wow. She's like, no, I just wanted to check how you are. Is the drive going okay? And I said to her, I'm ready to be baptized. And she burst into tears. She thought, wow, this is the one thing she's been praying for since she could possibly remember, And she said she was so grateful and so happy that finally I've made the decision. And we got baptized in the ocean. And it was the most beautiful experience because I love the sea. And it was at sunrise. My cousin was there too. And my life has changed. God is working in my life in the most incredible ways. I'm just so grateful. I just hope that not everybody has to go through the pain I went through. Just listen, damn it. And Jesus really is the way. With everything, there's no work involved. You don't have to work for Jesus' love. He loves you already. And that for me is a big thing because somebody who's high functioning all the time and busy on the go all the time, my whole life has been about work. And for the first time, I can say, I don't have to work for God's love. I am made in His image. He loves me already. Yeah, and that's very powerful. It's a beautiful place to be.
Thanks for joining us online today. As a family, we would love to meet you in person, so plan a visit to our Dr. Deo Durban campus by going to drDeo.org/Durban.